Human farmer got a ruined outpost on an unknown planet. Until $2 billion oredeposits. Beginning, the ruin and the dream. The shuttle dropped to the orange-tinted skies of Kepler, 119F, shaking in turbulence that rattled every rivet in its hull. Ethan Marlowe gripped the armrests, eyes fixed on the planet's dusty surface growing larger below. He wasn't a prospector, not a soldier, and certainly not a scientist. He was a farmer, born in the wheat fields of Mars' terraformed valleys, raised on the rhythm of soil and crop cycles. But farming wasn't what it used to be. Automated corporations had swallowed whole industries, leaving independent farmers like Ethan squeezed out, bankrupt, and forgotten. His only hope came from the Colonial Frontier Resettlement Act, a program that handed out abandoned outposts on fringe worlds for nearly nothing. You'll get a roof, a patch of land, and the chance to make something grow, the colonial agent had told him. What Ethan got was far from that promise. The shuttle landed in the shadow of jagged basalt cliffs. Beyond lay Outpost 47K, a scattering of half-collapsed domes, corroded metal scaffolds, and broken power pylons. What had once been a research station decades ago was now nothing more than a scar on a forgotten world. Ethan stepped off the ramp, boots sinking into the gritty sand. The air was breathable, thin but laced with iron dust that scratched the lungs. His farm consisted of 4 hectares of cracked, lifeless ground fenced by rusted posts, and a single hydroponics unit that looked like it hadn't run since the last Starship War. Still, he wasn't deterred. Back on Mars, Ethan's father had always told him, land is land. Doesn't matter if it's Earth, Mars, or the backside of some frozen moon. If you work it, it'll give back. So Ethan rolled up his sleeves, patched what he could of the water recyclers, and started planting nutrient gels and protein pods inside the hydroponics bay. Weeks turned into months. Crops barely sprouted. Power outages were constant. Nights were freezing, days searing. He fought dust storms, radiation spikes, and loneliness so sharp it cut like a knife. Neighbors? None. The nearest settlement was a mining colony 300 kilometers away. Ethan's outpost was a ruin, and worse, his credit reserves dwindled with each supply shipment. But the stubborn part of him, the part that carried centuries of farming grit in his blood, refused to leave. He wasn't just going to survive. He was going to make this land his own. And then the ground itself changed everything. The discovery. It started with the earthquakes. Small tremors rattled the hydroponics domes, shaking nutrient tanks loose. At first, Ethan thought it was the planet shifting, but then he noticed something stranger. Metallic shards rising out of the soil after each quake. One morning, after a particularly violent tremor, Ethan found a chunk of glittering orlage half buried near the outpost's edge. He pried it free and held it up to the twin suns. It shimmered with a silver-blue hue unlike anything he'd seen. Curiosity tugged at him. He loaded the shard onto his rover and made the grueling 2-day journey to the mining colony. The assay officer, a gruff woman named Sarah Kwan, examined it under her scanners. Her brows furrowed, then her eyes went wide. "Do you have any idea what this is?" she demanded. Ethan shook his head. "Hyperium ore," she whispered. "The same alloy used in starship cores and quantum gates. This sample alone, unrefined, is worth 20,000 credits." Ethan's stomach dropped. Sarah ran the scans again, confirming the density. "If you're sitting on a vein of this, Marlowe, you could be sitting on 2 billion credits worth of deposits." 2 billion. Ethan could barely process it. When he returned to the outpost, he began digging. Using makeshift drills and excavation tools, he uncovered more veins, thick streaks of shimmering or running to the bedrock beneath his land. Each quake seemed to push more of it upward, as though the planet itself wanted him to find it. But with discovery came danger. Word spread fast, too fast. Within weeks, prospectors and corporate scouts began circling. Drones buzzed overhead. Ethan received encrypted messages offering to purchase his claim. Some offered millions. Others carried veiled threats. Ethan ignored them all. The ore was his. Yet the more he mined, the stranger things became. The ore emitted faint pulses, like a heartbeat. At night, it glowed softly, casting eerie light across the broken outpost. The closer Ethan worked near the deposits, the more vivid his dreams became. Dreams of vast starships, sailing oceans of light, and civilizations long gone. He began to suspect the ore wasn't just valuable. It was alien. Conflict. The struggle for ownership. The corporations didn't wait long to act. One morning, Ethan awoke to find an unauthorized landing ship squatting near his hydroponics bay. Armed mercenaries in sleek exosuits disembarked, their insignia bearing the emblem of Helion Industries, a megacorp infamous for acquiring frontier resources by force. Their commander, a tall woman with cold eyes, confronted him. "You've made quite the discovery, Mr. Marlowe," she said. "Hyperium veins like this could fuel fleets for decades. Unfortunately, this land is wasted on you. Sign over the claim, and you'll be compensated generously. Refuse, and things might get complicated." Ethan's jaw tightened. "This land is mine. The act gives me full rights." She smirked. "Paper rights don't mean much out here." That night, Ethan fortified his outpost as best he could. He wasn't a soldier, but desperation made him resourceful. He rigged the old power pylons into makeshift EMP traps and armed his rover with mining lasers. He sent an emergency transmission to the Colonial Council, though he doubted help would come in time. The first attack came at dawn. Mercenaries stormed defenses, weapons blazing. Ethan triggered his traps, frying their suits. He fought tooth and nail, using every ounce of grit his farming life had taught him, because defending land, whether crops or ore, was in his blood. But he was only one man. The mercenaries regrouped, preparing for a second assault. That's when the ground itself came alive. The Hyperium veins pulsed violently, emitting seismic waves that knocked the mercenaries off their feet. From the fissures, bursts of blue light shot upward, crackling with energy. Some mercenaries fled in terror. Others were incinerated where they stood. Ethan stood frozen, realizing the ore wasn't just ore, it was alive. Or at least, it contained remnants of something once living, once powerful. When the quake ended, silence fell. The mercenaries retreated to their ship, unwilling to face forces they couldn't understand. Ethan, trembling, stared at the glowing veins beneath his outpost. His farm wasn't sitting on just a resource. It was sitting on the heart of something ancient. Climax, the choice. Weeks later, colonial officials finally arrived, drawn by both Ethan's distress signals and the corporate report of violence. They confirmed the deposits, estimating their worth at over 2 billion credits. The council offered Ethan two options: sell the claim to the colonial administration and retire wealthy beyond imagination, retain ownership, but take full responsibility for defending and managing the site, knowing corporations would never stop coming. Ethan walked the perimeter of his outpost that night, gazing at the land he had tried to farm. The hydroponics domes were half ruined, the soil barren. He had come here seeking to grow crops, not riches. And yet, in fighting for this land, he had realized something deeper. The ore was valuable, yes, but it was also dangerous. If handed to corporations, it would fuel wars, build fleets, maybe even destroy worlds. He remembered the dreams, the visions of civilizations that once sailed starlight. Maybe this was their legacy. Maybe it wasn't meant to be strip mined and sold. Ethan made his decision. When the council reconvened, he refused a buyout, but instead of keeping it for himself, he petitioned for the land to be designated protected planetary reserve, off limits to corporations and militaries. He would remain its caretaker, a farmer not crops but a memory, protecting the heart of an ancient world. The council hesitated, then, under pressure from public broadcasts Ethan had secretly released about the mercenary assault, agreed. Helion Industries fumed but could do nothing legally, ending the guardian of the ore. Years passed. Ethan's farm never grew much in the way of food, but became something greater, a sanctuary. Scientists, historians, and wanderers came to study the glowing veins and the energy they emitted. The reserve drew attention across the colonies as a place of mystery and wonder. Ethan, once a bankrupt farmer, became known as a guardian of Kepler 119F. He never took wealth, though he could have been richer than kings. Instead, he lived simply, tending to his ruined outpost and watching over the land. Sometimes, on quiet nights, he still dreamed. In those dreams, he sailed among the stars with beings of light, carried by the pulse of the ore itself. And every morning, when he awoke to the orange skies and the ruined domes, he smiled. For though his farm had failed to grow crops, it had grown something far greater, a legacy worth more than 2 billion credits.